Welcome to I See Gray with Class. We are thrilled that you are listening today, and we are so thrilled about our guest that we have. I'm Chantele Steffens. I'm one of the co-hosts of our show of I See Gray, and we are now called I See Gray with Community Coalition. Today, I have three wonderful guests, and hoping that we might even have some more. I have Andrew Shaw, who is the superintendent of Monroe Public Schools. I have James Drew, who is the principal of Orchard Center High School. And I have Chad Tolstdt, who is the Director of Public Safety in Monroe. Three wonderful leaders in our community. And we thought, in light of the things that we are doing, like going back to school and making sure our kids are safe, that we would have a conversation about school safety. So welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. So glad
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so you guys, usually it's a pretty relaxed atmosphere around here. That's one of the things we love about I See Gray is we're a bunch of classmates that gathered together and said, hey, what if we just got together once a week and had good conversations about things happening in our community and how we can make sure that we see everyone as human and set aside judgment and pretty much do our best to be as kind as possible in those times, which is one of the reasons I love having you guys on our show, because I know, Andrew, last year we had a whole kindness, we had a whole week of events about it that you had designed, which is wonderful and did for our school district. And so I get the privilege of serving for Monroe Public Schools as an art teacher, and I appreciate that very much. But I would like to start out by just having each of you guys introduce yourself, talk to our community members about what you do, and then we'll go from there and have a conversation about safety. Chad, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Chad Tolstdt. I'm the Director of Public Safety here for the City of Monroe. I oversee all police and fire operations for the City of Monroe.
James?
I'm James Drew. I'm the principal of Orchard Center High School and Monroe Virtual High School. And essentially, my number one job is to get kids graduated in a safe and orderly fashion.
Love it.
And I'm Andrew Shaw, the superintendent, and so I get the great pleasure of working alongside all of these wonderful people just to lead the district. And we talk about making Monroe a destination district, and so keeping kids safe is a priority in that endeavor.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's get started with the just with the conversation about public safety. I want to tread lightly, but I know that we've had a lot of things happen around our nation recently with keeping schools safe. And so I want to just start out by asking one of you to begin talking about some of the conversations you all have been having in terms of keeping our schools safe. So Andrew, I think I might ask you to start because you sent out a wonderful newsletter last week.
Yes, I appreciate that. So our goal is to really get our kids, when they see something, say something, and thinking in that mindset right there, and to just try and relax there. I was just at a conference and did a presentation on school safety, and we hovered around that idea though of our kids' mental health and their well-being. And so what we're challenged with honestly right now is how to address school threats that are bogus, and and while at the same time keeping everybody safe. It's a great challenge right there. But I do know that we've worked with our prosecuting attorney and our law enforcement officers, and we're going to hold people accountable. If we can catch them, hold them accountable, and really we're going to try and even get to the parents because it's all together on this front.
Absolutely. Actually, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have the show today. So I'm so glad that you kind of teed up that perfectly, is getting to the parents and having great conversations with our parents. And so I'm wondering, James, if you wouldn't mind giving us some feedback about how perhaps you have chatted with your parents or even talked to your students about things that could keep us safe at school by doing different things at school.
Yeah, I'll start with the students. I want to echo what Andrew said about mental health. One of the first aspects for school safety is the individual student, and how do we have relationships with them? What do we know about them? And the more we know about them, the better we can be aware of situations that might turn to unsafe situations. We have all kinds of levels of unsafe situations, I guess, from the drastic ones we hear nationally, all the way down to individual safety in a classroom. We have conversations about all of those all the time as a staff. As students, a lot of our conversations revolve around our drills that we have to do. We do several different types of drills each year. And during those drills, especially, we do three safety drills a year. During the drill, we have conversations, and after the drill, we do some kind of talk about what does the drill mean? What do we have to do? What are the expectations? What type of drill are we in? Other conversations with parents. One of our main conversations with parents is if we have, let's say we have a teach and play situation, and that could be for the physical safety of a student who has a health emergency or a safety situation in the building or in the community. We work with our communications office and central office to make sure we communicate with parents as quickly and as succinctly as possible. To make them aware of what's going on. We field individual calls from parents, but there's more work to be done with conversations with parents for sure.
That's great. I know one of the reasons that we do this show is because our community coalition is a gathering of community leaders that are talking about how we can partner together to make sure that we're taking care of our community and the members of it, and leading them to the resources they need to keep themselves mentally well, physically well, emotionally well. And so I know at school we're working on that all the time as well. How would you say that you go about doing that, James, working on helping students be more emotionally well?
Well, there's several levels to that, and each person in the building has their own role in that. We have specific people that are targeted people. At the district level, we purchase programs like trails. We teach the teachers how to do the trails and specific people how to do trails groups. We have social workers within the district that create like a wraparound type of service for students. Everybody in the school has some type of training in social emotional health. There's always more work to be done. I talk to the teachers sometimes and they feel underprepared sometimes because it's not an area that they necessarily trained for. So it can be a little bit difficult for teachers, but the more and more we practice those things, the better we get at it. And really it comes back to relationships. So there's several levels of it. At Orchard Center High School, we have a student service provider who has a social work degree, and she actively pulls students. We have meetings, we discuss who needs some help. We're always aware, try to be aware as much as possible of moods and changes of moods, changes of patterns of behavior, all types of things like that.
Love that. That's great advice for parents at home as well, being in tune with their kids in terms of their moods and changes in patterns of behavior. Thank you so much. Chad, when I think about how you all support our community, one of the things I've been really impressed with is that you guys are really great at partnering with Monroe Community Mental Health and their crisis response team. But what are some things that your officers have been trained in specifically to help people who might be in a mental health crisis, that sort of thing?
So all of our officers are trained in a de-escalation. I know it's a term heard a lot, but all of our officers are trained in de-escalation. Many of these skills officers possess for many years. We just didn't have a specific name for it, but they're being taught more specific techniques in how we can deal with and recognize some people that might be in a mental health crisis, which is a broad term, and that can mean something different for every person in there. But I think to speak with what Principal Drew kind of touched on was that it's, for us to know our personnel, for like we have Andrew Notario just came on with us, for him to know the people within his school and say, hey, something's not quite right with this person, not to go to the large, to the extreme of, hey, we're going to have a violent act here, but even say this someone is a little bit off here, let's get them the resources they need. It may not be within law enforcement, it may be deferred over to a social services partner, but these kind of communications, these relationships sitting on these boards like the Community Coalition helps build these foundations, helps build these relationships to get people to the right resources.
Down to the auditorium. Again, if you have not gotten your
You're at schools, can you tell?
yeah.
Yep, it is picture day, so there's been a
Oh,
lot of yes, a lot of notifications going over the PA.
Andrew,
Andrew,
thank you for joining us.
Yeah, can you mute
Thank
that,
you.
Andrew, until you're maybe until you are able to your question?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Apologies.
That's okay, no problem.
Chantele, I'd like to kind of piggyback off what Chad said about partner, and you brought up partnerships and the community coalition. I think one of the strongest partnerships we have as far as safety is with the Monroe Police Department. We directly deal with the Monroe Police Department at Orchard Center High School on a regular basis. Officer Notari is assigned to our building as our SRO. He's introduced himself right from the beginning. I got to know him actually over the summer a little bit during summer school because of a situation he helped me with. And he's been a constant presence here. We've had a couple of situations this year at the building where we've asked for law enforcement to come help us out. And one of the recent situations, this is a melding of the mental health and a policing role where they do both. We had a student that was in crisis. We determined as a group that the crisis wasn't a lawful crisis. It was a mental health crisis. And a few of the officers were very patient, very genuine and very helpful. And Mr. Notario was one of the leaders on this situation. And they were able to get the student to the medical facility for the help that they needed. And they turned what could have been a situation where law had to be enforced to assisting a person get the help they need. And within a few hours, I was able to talk to the family, talk to the child, and we got a great plan going. And it's their patience and understanding that helped in that situation.
I love that you explained that. That's actually what I've witnessed many times as well, is I'm very impressed with our officers and how they respond. And it's really, really great to see the evolution. And perhaps if you don't interact with police officers very much, no offense, Chad, but we like to hang out with you outside of your job, but it's not always the funnest to hang out with you inside of your job. but I do really appreciate the professionalism and just the sensitivity to what type of situation is it that you're pulling up to and how to respond best. So thank you so much. Andy, when you think about what is our biggest challenge that we face as a nation, this is a big question, by the way, I'm just warning you. And when you think about the biggest challenge we face as a nation in terms of creating safety for our kids at school, what would that be? What is the biggest challenge to make that happen?
So the biggest challenge I see on that is really, as we continue to move forward, is not becoming lackadaisical in our approaches. I'm fearful that with the swatting that happens, the fake threats that occur, that it becomes it's just another fake threat generated by it could be an AI, it could be something else out there, and that down the road we don't take it, that schools don't take it seriously, and then that's when something bad happens. So that's, as we navigate this, I think that's our greatest challenge, because we look at our first 3 weeks and the number of communications we needed to push out over different situations. It takes a lot of time, and so I think that's our focus, is not getting lackadaisical.
Absolutely. One of the things I've noticed as a teacher is that you run really great systems. Like there are some things, like there's a calendar, there's like, this is what we're doing this week, this is what we're doing next week. We're always practicing our routines, making sure that we have our safety calls in place, our safety protocols in place. So we appreciate that very much. That's also the reason I wanted to have this show about that, to just kind of reassure our community that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that if there is a crisis, we're prepared. So
Chantele, if I may add on several what Andy was saying. Andy did a good job of explaining the cooperation. So when we get these false calls, these swatting calls, we as an investigative agency, us in the sheriff's office, investigate those. We had a meeting with the prosecutor's office yesterday, speaking with the prosecutor, with the state police. We all, myself, Sheriff Goodenough, the post commander Steve Borello, and the prosecutor all stay on the same page here, that these things are important to prosecute because they cause problems within the school, even though they're false, they're in, let's say, false alarms. But we need to be prepared at all times to respond in case it was a true emergency. So we take these false calls, these swatting calls, extremely seriously. We investigate them and we send them to the prosecutor's office to be prosecuted.
Wow, that's great to know. So if I paraphrase what you're saying, I guess what I'm hearing you saying, Chad, is parents should be having discussions with their kids about how much trouble they could actually get into. This is not something you're taking lightly.
That is correct. Parents should be communicating with their children. I mean, sometimes children do what children do, but they should be aware of what the electronics they're using and what manner they're using them.
Yes, okay, understood. Andy, I'm sorry, interrupted. Go ahead.
So, no, I was gonna share too, but I went always keeping that focus. That's also why a year ago, our board approved us bringing in a third party group to assist us in school safety. And so it's not only the hardening, but it's also the social emotional approaches that we take. And what that's provided us is consistency amongst all of our buildings and keeping what's that focus out there. So when we talk about having safety committee team meetings in our buildings, we have a district level one, and they're all interacting on what is happening. So we can always be providing a great and safe environment.
As a teacher, or as teachers and a building administrator, I appreciate the efforts that Andy and the board have made in the area of safety. It's a lot more common. We have a monthly building meeting, a monthly district meeting. We work with the contracted company, ACAP, to have conversations. Their representative works with me at my building because there's a lot of things I'm not trained in the safety area. And there's a lot of things that he's helping me see that I didn't see. He's helping with better routines and within the building, creating different scenarios that we kind of walk through to ensure that we're ready for most anything.
I had to mute myself because I had a student walk in. I'm at school. So I do want to ask you guys, when you think about the, I guess, success stories around this topic, what comes to mind for you? And maybe Officer Notario might have one. I know it's early on, but what are your success stories around this topic?
Oh, I'm going to lead off right there because we've had a couple of situations, I think back to last year, even this year, where our kids have stepped in. They've heard about something or seen something and have immediately gotten it to the administration. And I know it's stressful on because there's fear that that the student may retaliate because they've shared the information with administration. But huge kudos to our kids for stepping up and saying, I know something's happening right here, or there's that concern, so we can get involved ahead of time. And so we've had that over the last 2 years, and I just appreciate our kids for taking that courageous step.
And you made me think about like our behavior protocols that we have now, that where kids are actually kind of doing the first.
Right, when we think about our rubrics right there.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else? I think Officer Notario. Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Being as this is my first year in school and we are only on week 3, my success stories are very small. I don't think I haven't really encountered anything big yet. But it is nice to be able to walk around and kind of see the drama starting as middle schoolers and high schoolers start. It is really nice to be able to kind of get in between that and then let staff and administrative know. I know our restorative practices here are great. So I love to be able to take them up there, sit down with them inside the restorative practices, and then get it squashed so that way we don't have any future incidents. And so far, it's been extremely successful.
I love what you just said, to see the drama starting. I had someone offer a suggestion for when I had a lot of drama in my class. They said, have you ever asked your students, how could we handle this with the least amount of drama possible? And it brings about some really great conversations. And I think that's really great for parents at home too, to encourage their kids to think about still talking about your emotions is important, but how can we handle this with the least amount of drama as possible? And it actually works. I actually hear other students asking each other, how do you think we could handle this with the least amount of drama as possible? And of course they're joking in some ways, but it's fun. So when you guys think about the intervention that families could go about doing in their own homes to pay attention to something that could evolve into something that would be really unpleasant, what would that look like?
I think one of the first things, and I don't know about other families, but it seems like families might not sit and talk as much as they used to. Everybody has their device in their hand, they're doing their own thing, people get busy lives. My students have situations where things at home aren't always easy for whatever reason. And I think it all starts with talking and communication, because if you don't talk and communication when the time is important to really talk, then the language isn't there sometimes.
James, I'm going to hop right on with that one too. I was talking with the undersheriff the other day, and this topic came up right there, and it was like finding that hour and putting the phones away and putting it away so you talk, because our kids struggle right now with talking because they'd much rather, it's easier to communicate through a text or some other mechanism. And then what happens though is their words get miscommunicated because of how they text it out there or email it. So that idea of getting our kids just to talk, have time for conversations at home would be wonderful.
Yeah. I read this book this summer that was recommended to me by my principal and Emily Bunden, who is our director of special education here at Monroe Public Schools. And I was asking them because I could just see their way of being with students was, I would say different than, I'm 53. So lots of things have evolved over that amount of time. And so how they interacted with students, it just made me intrigued. And so they recommended a book called From Behaving to Belonging. So
Yep.
I want to share that on this show because it had such a huge impact on how I teach, because it helped me examine, am I making sure that every kid feels like they belong? And then it made me wonder, I'm sorry, give me a second. We get emotional on this show. I just want you all to know. So it made me wonder, like, had I always communicated with my kids that they belong in our family, that they belong to us and we belong to them, and that sense of belonging that I wanted them to make sure they always felt when they were at home. Through this book, transitioned to my classroom, and it wasn't like I didn't do that before, but it's way more overt. And so I guess I want to pass on that. If you want to read a good book, it doesn't have to be just for teachers. It talks about how you can do your own self-care, because when you're caring for yourself, you're able to care better for others. But also communicating that your kids have a sense of belonging at your home, because I think that a lot of times in situations where things become unsafe with kids, it's most of the time because they just don't feel a sense of belonging anywhere. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's important to know that you always condemn the action and not the person, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes wrong choices. So there's consequences sometimes for those wrong choices. And we in law enforcement, we know about this, right? But you never condemn the person themselves, but they do belong. They made mistakes, and there's sometimes things that come along with making those mistakes, but how to make them feel more involved and what's the pathway out. We have our role within the law enforcement community to help with these functions, and then the other resources we can direct them to as well. So the expectations, when we started off, we talked about how officers would often interact with people in de-escalation. We were doing those things for a number of years. It's no longer like an exception to the rule. It's the expectation of what law enforcement officers are expected to do around the country. And the vast majority of them are doing it great. Very proud of my officers and those who serve under me. So it's important for them now to know, but we also, like teachers, are tasked with roles that we never thought we would be tasked with in this day and age. So learning all these things, we're like, well, why am I learning about this? I thought I was in charge of this. But the way the world works today, we're often, bleeding over into each other's professions. And that's why the communications, like talking with the superintendent and being on the committee with you, James, and you, Chantele, and getting to know one another. So, something comes up at the Orchard High School, I'll be like, well, I know the principal there. These things are important to have those relationships so we can call, communicate, see, hey, am I missing something? Do I not have the whole picture in this environment? And to be able to share those things and just kind of redirect rather than, hey, I'm going to send over a law enforcement officer to talk with this person, be like, hey, I'll talk with this teacher. That's where our SROs, like Andrew Material, are such a huge asset for the community and for the students in that school because they get to know them on a personal level. And I know Chantele sometimes is separating me from my uniform, but there is a person behind the uniform as well. We got to know each other a little bit better, but there is a person behind the uniform. And that's why our SOs are so important so they can get to know the officers as a person and feel safe.
Yes, I love that. At the very beginning of what you said, can you repeat that? Like say it louder for the people in the back. The condemn part.
Oh, we never condemn the person. You can condemn the action, but not the person.
That's what I witnessed, Chad, when you gave us the opportunity as a community coalition to go on a ride along with you. And that's what I witnessed with your officers. We were in the middle of a traffic stop and there was a situation that needed to be handled, but I never felt like your officers condemned the person. They were kind, very specific, had to follow through, read through why they were getting pulled over. But now I know your secret, which is a really great secret.
And that's universal. That's just not limited to us. That's universal.
I love it. Any closing comments that anyone wants to share?
I'm actually going to jump on what Director Tolstdt said just for kind of an ending thing. One of the biggest questions I get, especially being new, is I see a lot of these new kids and they just want to know, like, how many bad guys have I arrested? It's a lot of that. So whenever I get to talk to kids or if ever they meet me in my office, the first thing we kind of go over is I let them know that I've seen a lot of bad days, but I've seen very few bad people. So kind of dumbing it down or making it kid friendly it's worked wonders for them.
I love that. It's great. Anybody else?
I just wanted to go ahead.
No, go ahead, James, and I'll.
Thank you. One of the things I appreciate the most is getting to know Chad with the police department, get to know his SROs, work with local law enforcement that stop by the building. I appreciate Andy, leading our district with safety precautions in mind. And I feel a lot more prepared now than I ever have before in my whole career. Doesn't mean that I don't have learning to do, but at least it's more of a comfortable place.
Mm-hmm. Andy?
Yeah, I'm with you, James. We're always learning. So what I would like to just share here at the end is for our parents and the community members is that when we put in our line that when we communicate out, like our kids' safety is our number one priority, it truly is that. And that what that means is sometimes we can't get a communication out fast enough and parents get frustrated with that. But if we had kids not in a safe situation, we'd be pushing communications out really fast. But they just need to trust in us that we do have our kids' best interests and staff's best interests at heart. And we're always going to side on the side of caution. And so we ask that always just to be patient as our communications come out. And we can only get them out as fast as we can when we're trying to gather all the proper information. And I say that because when we push out miscommunications or misinformation, it only makes it worse. And we saw that on Facebook earlier this week, when miscommunication was being forwarded around in regards to our school, and we're having to stop it because it's getting parents all worried and some kids worried. And so we just ask for that understanding that we do have our kids' best interests at heart at all times.
I think that has been a really strong point of our school district is we communicate pretty quickly. Like you sent us a letter to parents that went out right away. We do that pretty quickly. We could all be patient enough as community members to wait for that specifically. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much, you guys. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. We're going to share this on Facebook to make sure that other people who want to know more can listen. And we appreciate you as listeners for being a part of our IC Gray and Community Coalition broadcast. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chantele.
Well, have a great
All
week.
right, take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
Gentlemen, have a great day.
Bye-bye.